Hello, pirates. Today we are going to go over the 4 types of macromolecules. Yesterday you guys watched the video, so today we're just going to go over and make sure that you understood the content and that you filled out your document with the correct information. So what we're going to start with in your interactive notebooks, this is going to go on the new page 7. And we are going to start by looking at the carbohydrates. So for carbohydrates, lipids, nucleic and proteins, we're going to look at their structure. So what's the structure of a monomer? What is the monomer? What is the subunit for that particular macromolecule? What its function is, what its job is, and then some examples. So the first one is a carbohydrate. And carbo and carbon have that beginning because there's lots of carbon in a carbohydrate. And there's actually lots of carbon in all of these types of molecules. But when we look at the structure of a carbohydrate, you're going to notice that a lot of times they come in the shape of a hexagon because carbons, and each dot here on the hexagon represents where a carbon is bonded to these different functional groups chemically. But they're often in the shape of a hexagon or a pentagon. So a lot of times you'll see little hexagons or little pentagons, and they are representing a ring of carbon, and these carbon rings are carbohydrates. Now, I remember that carbohydrates are sugars, and I think of all these little carbon ring structures as kind of like little hard candies. So I think like my grandma had a candy dish that they look like, if I had to compare them to the pictures of the other ones, these are like a bunch of candies. And these are carbohydrates and they're sugars. All right, the monomer for a carbohydrate is called a monosaccharide. So again, mono means one, so mono, and saccharide means sugar in Latin. So this is a monosaccharide is the subunit. And a monosaccharide gets connected to another monosaccharide and another one to make the polysaccharide, which is many saccharides or many monosaccharides put together. The function of our carbohydrates is they provide our cells with an immediate energy source. So the key thing to know about carbohydrates is they provide our cells with immediate energy. So if I eat a whole bunch of sugar or bread or pasta, it's going to fuel my cells with immediate energy once my digestive system has broken them down back into those monosaccharides, and then my cells are going to start absorbing those sugar molecules, and they're going to start using them as energy for the cell. So they're going to convert them into a special kind of energy and put them right to use. Now, this is why athletes like runners, soccer players, the football team, before a big game, they might carb load, and they might eat a whole bunch of carbohydrates so that they have that quick, immediate energy source as fuel during their game so they can have peak athletic performance. Examples are polysaccharides. So polysaccharide, many monosaccharides put together. And other types of carbohydrates that aren't just us saying a food group like pasta or bread are going to be, because these are the molecules that are in pasta and bread, are going to be things like starch. So starch is what's in pasta and bread. It can be broken down into glucose. Fructose is a fruit sugar, and lactose is a milk sugar. And if you want to remember, all these things are, sugar. All right, so carbohydrates are sugars. Now, we love sugar. It gives us an immediate source of energy. This is going to bring us over to the lipids. And for the lipids, when we eat our favorite foods, when we're breaking down those carbohydrates, if our body doesn't have enough immediate carbohydrates to break down, our bodies might start breaking into the lipids, okay? And the lipids is a fancy way of saying fats, all right? So the lipids here, I'm just going to kind of outline them in purple. Lipids are fats. So basic structure, they have a glycerol group, and then they have these fatty acid chains. So the monomer is glycerol, with fatty acid chains. So glycerol and fatty acids. When we're looking at our simplified picture over here, this is the glycerol group, and these are the fatty acid chains. And here, look at the saturated and the unsaturated fat. The saturated fat here, we're just looking at this saturated chain, these fatty acid tails. The function of our lipids is they are stored energy. So our body stores energy in the form of fats. Now, if I eat a whole lot of carbohydrates and take in a whole lot of sugar, my body has the ability to convert those sugars into fats and save them for later. So if I drink a whole lot of soda or a whole lot of candy, if my body's not able to burn them all off, my body can convert the carbohydrates into fats and save it for later. Now, we used to think that eating a diet high in fat caused our bodies to store fat, but what we found in the last few decades is when we overconsume sugar, our body is going to convert the sugar into fat. So it's important we eat the right kind of fats and the right kind of sugars, but a lot of our problems in our country with being overweight or obesity stems from the overeating of sugars, refined sugars that our body breaks down too fast and then absorbs or stores too fast. All right, examples of lipids are going to be just that. It's going to be fats, oils, and waxes. And structures in our cells that are made of fats are going to be things like the cell membrane. So the cell membrane is made of fats, a lot of fat molecules or lipids all put together. So glycerol and fatty acids. So the cell membrane is made of lipids. Another one is cholesterol. So it's important that we eat good fats, like fats in avocados, fats in nuts like almonds, peanuts, walnuts, cashews, pistachios, and things like avocados and things like olives and olive oil. Where we get a lot of our unhealthy saturated fats from are going to be things like butter and fried food. All right, don't tell the bakers, right? You can bake healthy. All right, the next one we're going to look at, I'm going to kind of go around the clock here. So the next one I'm going to look at is the proteins. So if we look at in the bottom right-hand corner, here we have the proteins. And with the proteins, the structure of the protein, some people think this looks like a little muscle guy. So if you guys look at him this way, it looks like here's his head and his body, and here he's lifting weights with this big R, which stands for a long carbon chain. But this one subunit here, this entire structure is one amino acid. So this whole thing here is one amino acid, and that's the monomer of a protein. And when we draw amino acids, they're usually simplified and simply drawn as a whole bunch of circles. So they usually get simplified into a whole long chain of circles representing each amino acid. The function of proteins is that they make up the structures in our cells. So they are cell structures. So the cell skeleton is made of proteins. So cell structures, and they also carry out chemical reactions. So they also have a role in chemical reactions. Now, when we look at what is the example that goes with each role, for cell structures, it's the cytoskeleton that makes up the cell structure. And sometimes there's even like proteins in a cell membrane. But the cytoskeleton and then the chemical reactions are done by enzymes. So if you've ever heard of enzymes before, enzymes are done through chemical reactions. Okay? Moving over to our last square, the last square is the nucleic acids. And for the nucleic acids, these are DNA. So here we have the nucleic acids. And for the nucleic acids, the structure of a nucleic acid, it looks like a pentagon. So one part of the nucleic acid subunit is a sugar, the pentagon, and then it's attached to a phosphate, and then it's attached to a base. And it looks kind of like a cheerleader with their arms out, one to the side and one straight up in the air. And this is one single subunit of a DNA. So right here, this is like the base is going out. This is the rungs of the ladder. And then these two parts, the sugar and the phosphate, they are part of the backbone, the sides of the DNA strand. The monomer, one of these units right here, is referred to as a nucleotide. And it's easy to remember nucleotide and nucleic acid. They sound the same. And they're both found in the nucleus. Their function is to store and transmit our genetic information. So they store and transmit genetic information. They are our genetic informations. They are the instructions for our life. They are the secret to life. It's all in the directions. And examples would be things like DNA and RNA. And when we look at those two examples, DNA and RNA, the NA in DNA stands for nucleic acid. And the RNA, the NA stands for nucleic acid. The D or the R are just discussing the sugar. All right, so you guys now have a basic overview of those 4 types of macromolecules. And if you weren't able to print this out, just write it in your notebook. Just copy it down, draw 4 squares, write it out by hand. Draw some simplified pictures. What you guys are going to do next then is over on page 7, or I'm sorry, not on page 7, on page number 6. So you guys have page number 7, that's your right side. On page number 6, you're going to set up a little activity to help you remember your macromolecules. You want to memorize them. So what you guys want to do is you're going to make 4 pockets on page 6, and you can use Post-it notes or a piece of paper, or maybe you guys have like an envelope that you could use at home. But what you're going to do is you're going to make 4 pockets. I'm going to use Post-it notes. So here is pocket number 1. Here is pocket number 2. And I'm putting these down so the sticky side is at the bottom. So pocket number 1, pocket number 2. And here is pocket number 3. And pocket number 4. Excellent. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use a little bit of tape to tape the sides to make pockets. So I can use tape or I could use glue. You can make them really organized, or, in my case, I'm just trying to do this quick. So the video is not too long, but you're going to set up 4 pockets, and you're going to label each pocket with one of the macromolecules. So for my first pocket, pocket number 1, sorry, this is kind of sloppy. But for that first pocket, I'm going to label the first pocket as my carbohydrates. So I'm going to write this as carbohydrates. And for my second pocket, this is the lipids. My third pocket is the nucleic acids. And my fourth pocket is the proteins. Now what you guys have in an attachment here is you have an attachment that gives you 2 columns of cutouts. Now if you can print these out, print them out, and you can use these cutouts. If not, you can write them out on pieces of paper. But what you're going to do is you're going to kind of use these for sorts and flashcards. So you can ask yourself, like, what is a monosaccharide? What is a nucleotide? And you only need 1 column. They're doubled up for printing purposes. But after you cut them out, you're going to have a stack of strips. And what you want to do is you want them to memorize and sort. So for example, I'm just going to look at my pictures. Like I'm going to look at this and go, what is this? This is a lipid. So I'm going to put it into my lipid pocket. What is this? Enzymes, the cytoskeleton. They are proteins. My little muscle guy, protein. DNA and RNA, what are they? Nucleic acids. So you want to test yourself and just practice sorting these, and you can put them all in and take them all out. You can scramble them up, put them back together, glucose, fructose. So you just want to go through and use this as practice to memorize your macromolecules. So you have your stacks and you'll create a sort, or you can use them as flashcards. In the end, your page 6 and 7 will look like this. So you have both of these two things. There is nothing to submit today. You will submit questions tomorrow. Let me know if you guys have any questions or need help with anything. I hope you have a wonderful day.